Thank you, Claudia, and thank you for this opportunity to talk about what I really did. I really thank you, Claudia, because and of course the Board of Management, because if I didn't get this question, I wouldn't have done it. So it's an honor to talk to you this way, of course, but it's scaring. I think it's scaring to talk to a screen and not to see your faces. Still, we are where we are. And I'd like to share with you some of the steps in my personal professional journey. And when I started this, I understood that it's really about 50 years, and it's quite a long time, isn't it? And I will divide it into slots, not to make it too heavy for you. In the rear mirror, it might look like a logical plan behind it, but the truth is that in different crossroads, it really was often more like choices by random reasons, by actual reasons at the time. I'm soon 70 years old now, so it's really time to looking back and of course forward to find how and why I went the road I did. So if you look at, let me see if I can change. I have so great equipment now. I'm not used to it. So there you are. My professional journey is about 50 years, and I've not, of course, not take all of it, but some pieces of it. And I will share. I will divide it into pieces. So I'll start with the 70s to 90s, and then I go to every decade after that, and pick out some, well, at least for me, interesting things. So starting with the 70s to 90s, just so you don't remember that I do understand that there were a lot of important things that happened beside my career, so I put them there, some of them. But in my life, at 1970, I was a young student. I finished my high school, and I actually went to music school. I was 18, life on top. I didn't see any limits on what I could do. I was young in a country where all types of education was for free, and I had a lot of opportunities. I had to choose something. I thought about architecture, music, mathematics, data, science, but ended up with mechanical engineering by some specific reasons. One was a pressure from my father. And there was a program that was a combination of technology and pedagogics. At that time, it was very hard to become a legitimized teacher, and I really wanted to teach. So I entered the technical university in a very formal lady suit, not knowing too much of the environment 1970. Some friends from there still laugh at my strange outfit. Anyway, after a short time, I did find myself very happy there. Technology was interesting, it was fun and easy for me, and there was a lot of fun and a lot of nice people. And became lifelong friends. Among others, I found my fantastic husband there. And there was a big selection, so I really found him there. A lot, yeah. I was not at KTH the best student, but I did manage. Beside the technology program, I had 1 year in pedagogics, finished as Master of Pedagogics and a Master in Mechanical Engineering, specialized on production technologies. This was the time when the new NC machines was developed, so I really liked to program those machines. And it was quite difficult to get a job at that time, at least in Sweden. But after my examination, there was a large party in the technical museum, and I was seated beside the professor of machine elements. And after nice small talks and so forth, he wanted me to become a teacher in machine elements. I did, and I learned a lot. I spent some years there. Nowadays, many of my students from that time are at the end of their successful industrial careers. I meet them now and then. Most of them remember me for the good and for the bad. I was the only female teacher at the time, So they had my nickname as told as Maggan at machine. Then after some years, I was curious. I wanted to use my knowledge in practical work. I applied for a product development job in the medtech industry, and I spent 5 years with the company as a product developer, as responsible for new product development, and sorry about this, and responsible for new product development. It was really a learning experience to understand where technology really could make a difference for people needing rehabilitation or care. I was at the company the first master of engineering, of course also the first female engineer. My boss was very surprised when I wanted to do some practice in hospitals and care centers to meet with the real patients, users. Technically, it wasn't rocket science to draft rehab machines on a drawing board, not CAD that time. But to really discuss and understand the right level of complexity was indeed a learning procedure. One of the things that I identified as challenging was the very unsatisfying discussion between the market department, the product development department, and even much more with the production department. In an unpronounced way, I already then started to consider, how could this be more effective? When we got our first child, Anders, I realized that the traveling in the industry work caused us some problems. So I got back to teaching. In a technical gymnasium, which is the level of high school in your language, teaching youngsters from 15 to 18 years old in technology, mathematics, and control tech. Indeed nice for a few years. We got our second child, Annika, and I got more and more thoughtful. The first CAD was introduced and we were looking forward to CAM. I was responsible for the introduction. How can these tools help or hinder creativity in solution generation? And what about helping the collaboration between functions? Is it understood or foreseen? Anything written about it? We are now in the mid-80s. And here is our kids when they were small. I started to formulate my thoughts, got quite sure on what I wanted to investigate. I searched and I met with a lot of interesting people. Together with my youngest, Annika, on the right side, and I finally found a place at KTH where I was welcome to work if, and only if, I could attract resources for it. After some more research, I found a good colleague from behavioral science, Svante Hovmark at the Stockholm University, and the professor at machine elements at the time, Søren Andersen, welcomed the odd combination of technology and organizational psychology. I was not at all looking for an academic career at that time, but it was shown to me that the PhD position was the only and the most practical way to do what I wanted. So I became a PhD student, more than 30 years old. Still teaching, with Annika close to me, we applied for a research grant to study human design communication. And the interest for interdisciplinary research at the time had in Sweden just started. So we were happy to get good funding for 5 years. We made a lot of experiential and empirical studies. We worked based on grounded theory. We did action research, and we worked closely together with a number of industrial companies on different managerial levels. This way of questioning was relatively new at that time. During this year of our studies, our supervisors, one from machine elements and one from organizational psychology, learned to appreciate the knowledge of each other. So they came together and started collaboration. It was very interesting and learning for both me and Svante. We learned that there were many methods and tools to use, but the most challenging was the willingness and skills to collaborate in a fruitful way, and that the tools had to support collaboration. With our work, new empirical and qualitative methods was introduced into the machine design department at Kth. So we are moving to the next decade, and please do something not to sit too, well, to move a little. It's always good. So we're coming to the part 2, to 1990 to 2000. And there are also some very important milestones, and of course, many more, but I choose some of them. I graduated as a PhD in 1992 with a thesis on support tools and collaboration in product development. I was then pregnant with my 4th child, the 3rd born, Anna. She came in, 1.5 years earlier. It showed to be very timely, maybe coincidental, as industry was extremely interested in finding new ways to manage product development processes. One term widely used was concurrent engineering. Concurrency meant then mostly between development and manufacturing, but very much related to the computer tools for that. But we didn't work very much with the tools after some time. When we had seen that the collaboration was the important thing, we came back to use the term integrated product development, also including the human processes in the product development. I will in the following here use IPD for integrated product development. Around this time, I was visiting my first workshop in Copenhagen with Mogens Mørk and Andreasen related to the WDK school. He was, before that, only a name to me and an important reference, of course. But now we met, including Karin, the 4th child. We found a lot of common interests, and I got a new idol. After very good discussions, he introduced me to the people in the WDK, and I was invited to my first RIGI meeting in 1993, where I and little Karin joined. Vladimir Hubka, you see him in the lower corner, right corner there. He sang beautiful Hungarian songs in the ear of Karin. And I was happy to meet with life-lasting friends from many, many countries in the society. So this is the very start of my relation to the Science Society. I actually was one of the participants in the discussions and start of the Design Society by 2000. At Kth, I was promoted to lecturer. Someone whispered in my ear that there was an interesting professorship in engineering design and product development in Norway at NTU, which is now NTNU. I applied and I got it. And my youngest kid, Karin, she was only 2 years, and the family didn't want to move from Sweden. My husband worked for Ericsson in a very good position. My kids were in schools. And actually my daughter Annika, the elder one, said to me, "Mom, if you want to move to Norway, it is your choice. I will not move." She was 9 at the time. Anyway, I was given the opportunity to work 50% every second week in Trondheim. And I had the other 50%, the rest in Stockholm at Kth, and I did. And I really had a very good time in Norway. When I was there, I worked hard, as you might understand, because then my husband had the evenings and mornings with the kids. But after even if I appreciated very much to be there, I had to leave after about 1 year due to several reasons. And family, of course, was a strong one. And at the same time, there was a professorial chair in IPD at Kth planned. And what do you think that the Swedish government had thought about missing one of the very few female professors in technology to our neighbor country? For those of you that don't know, there are always some small competition between those Scandinavian countries. My country, Sweden, had very high ambitions on equal opportunities then. So during the time in Norway, I also worked with the actively in the development team of Andrea. Andrea is the Engineering Design Research Agenda, a national initiative started by industry, including the large technical universities in Sweden. Andrea got financed by 1997 and continued until 2003 and delivered over 80 technical doctors, many of which, around 60%, are active in industry, the rest in academia. The program has had a major impact on the industrial competitiveness and the collaboration between industry and academia in Sweden, hopefully also inspiring some of our international colleagues. In Stockholm, when coming back from Norway, I was supported in many ways. The interest for IPD was increasing a lot. We started a very successful major course at master's level in 1996, very much inspiring by our colleagues at Stanford, who at the time ran the teacher training called Creativity in Engineering Education. With Bernie Roth, Rolf Faster, Larry Leifer, many of you I think know these guys. The late Rolf Faster told us, if it's not worth doing, it's not worth doing good. That's an important statement that has followed me since then. The course and the further track we were developing was very sought after. A lot of students have been educated and were educated from the very beginning. We had the statement as a value ground to say that we want to educate complete engineers with using all senses, not only the technical ones or the mathematical skills, but they should also be skilled and trained in industrial product development processes, in practice, in teamwork, problem solving, also in conflict handling in teams, in project work, with project planning, organizing and project management, and creative and reflective thinking. What we also wanted is that the courses should be krävande, kreativt och kul, which means demanding, creative, and fun and joyful. This course has now run for over 20 years and of course developed several times, more on innovation and innovative engineering, but still with the new, so-called new at that time, value ground. The major is 30 ECTs over one academic year and at the end of the master education in IPD. Around 50 challenge-driven real-world problems has been performed and somewhat solved with external stakeholders during the years. There was also some interesting things going on when I came back to Sweden full-time. A professorship in integrated product development was announced. I applied, of course, and so did some other few persons. After a normal procedure, I was ranked as number 1, but there was one of the competitors who appealed against the decision. And then it's a long procedure, a long formal procedure, so it took some time. But at the end, it was judged to my favor. And they wrote, Norell is the most suitable for this professorship. And I was installed at that professorship in 1997. And together with my team, I still say it's my, but it isn't, of course. But the business in IPD was developed at the Department of Machine Design at Kth. The subject attracted several good and talented students, PhD students and teachers, both men and women. And already a year after my installation, I was persuaded to accept to be the pro-director of Kth. Of course, an honor, but very much hindering the continuation of my engineering design career. So, That was one decade. Now it's also time to move a little bit and to take some coffee or water or whatever you have. And we're coming to part 3, 2002 to 2010. One of the things that I had on the right side of these, there are 2 things that was special, horrifying in Sweden. The first was in '86, where our prime minister was killed in the street in Stockholm, and this time in 2003, the Anna Lindh, who was our foreign affairs minister, was killed, stabbed by knife. So these things was hard to take for all of us, of course. But back to my life as a pro-rector, I had some specific missions in the period 99 to 07. Most of them were not very much related to research in engineering design, nor in IPD. But I still realize, and I still think, that the engineering and organizational background from IPD showed to be very useful for university management and general development, with strong emphasis on fruitful collaboration and theories of change. Of course, I had some part-time teaching and research in IPD during these years, but the development work took most of my time and effort. The first year as pro-rector, I was responsible for the development of the Högskole-ingenjörsutbildning, which is the engineering education at bachelor level at KTH, which changed the organization and integrated the bachelor program into the longer engineering master programs during that time. As a part of my pro-rectorship, we also started a new center for medicine and health. This was a collaboration together with the Karolinska Institute and Stockholm County Council, and included interdisciplinary research and development and an unusual collaboration at that time. I was chairing the CTMH for many years, maybe too many, I don't know. One interesting program within the CTMH was a study program, the clinical fellowship, a program to create experts of picked students from different backgrounds, to make them experts in the field of mechanical innovation, or more specifically innovation where the needs of the clinic really was challenging. Another important, and maybe for design society even more important work and demanding work, was during the early 20s that I chaired the ICED 2003 in Stockholm. ICED 03, I think you say. This was one of the first, actually the second, but in the era of design society. And I dare to say that it was successful. This was in the time when there was no pandemic. Many people, at least from the so-called Western world, could travel and come to Stockholm. It was like something between 500 and 600 people there from a lot of places. It was a great experience. Many sleepless nights, and I think Chalmers has the same experience now, and many joyful memories and friends. And on this picture on the left side, you see the Swedish team, people from the Andrea program from the different universities. And you also see the Crown Princess who started the conference, and the City Hall where we had the dinner and where the Nobel dinners normally are. From the early days of Design Society, I served in the advisory board from 1 to 7 on the 2000, and in the board of management from 7 to 11. And in the early days of the society, there were extremely few female participants. It was Susan Finger, Lucian Blessing, and myself. And I saw Susan there. It took some years before we could see more of them. And here are some of the early ones. You see Wei from the US, Petra from Netherlands, Julie from France, and Claudia from UK, and Christina nowadays from Switzerland, and Gabi from Israel. Just examples. I know there are more, but these ladies come soon, and it was really nice. and the kids were growing as they do. We're coming to 2005, and I got a new assignment in my prorector's role to increase the attractiveness of KTH for female researchers and teachers. We initiated Future Faculty, a KTH program to overcome some of the barriers that hindered female academics to apply for higher positions. It was about how we announce positions, how we understand to describe topics in a broader context, and how to appreciate the contribution done by female researchers. It is, and it was. It's not a problem for the women if the university is not attractive. It is a problem for the university if they can't attract the talented women. We have to remember that. Since then, the numbers and the impact of female teachers and researchers has grown a lot at KTH, and of course in your places and in the design society. So something is really happening, referring to the 70s, I promise. Coming back to engineering design thinking, with the supporting vice chancellor and my prorector chair, I had the opportunity to build a team to start a larger development program called Product Innovation Engineering Program. It was a national program with the ambition to put increased innovation capability on the map. So we formulated an innovation engineering ecosystem and delivered a lot of doctors and some new professorships in PIP lasting from 2006 to 14. The idea was that in this system that the education should be the driving force to get this wheel going, so to say. And we wrote some books that helped us a lot on this journey. After PIP, several official political programs on how to foster innovation took place. Our program wasn't, in a way, the early bird to wake up. There was new forms of integration of research and education for innovativeness. And books were read and companies were interested to work within the program. As you might know, Sweden is since several years coming out as top in the European Innovation Scoreboard, and it still is, as a matter of fact. We like to think that we made some impact on these happenings. So now we are coming to the next and last decade. And you can't pass the fact that this is the decade where Trump was chosen, where we got the COVID and Brexit and the terrorism and a lot of other things. And in my life, beside all these things, of course, I had my last admin mission I got there. From 10 to 16, I had the responsibility for development of strategic external relations. It was to develop long-term relation to a number of strategic partners of strong value for future collaboration on research, education, and innovation. The idea was not to attract a lot of money, but to develop a common learning for mutual winnings, to increase both quality and relevance of the work at KTH. When I left, we had 11 strategic partners with developed processes of steering groups and yearly top management meetings. A few of the partners were official organizations like Stockholm City and the county councils. This led to an even more specific regional interest for collaboration with academia and education, including work with their real challenges. A new collaboration with Karolinska, Stockholm University, and Södertörn University was set up. It was called Open Lab, where students from these different programs work together on challenges defined by the official stakeholders. Open Lab was started 2013 and is ongoing. supporting sustainable solutions for the society. Also, this has been inspired by Stanford and their D schools in several places. And there are always websites on this if you're interested. My current great interest is in the Kth Global Development Hub, an initiative taken after several years of innovation master thesis program performed by our IPD students in African countries. The Global Development Hub started in 2016 with the goal to establish collaboration for mutual learnings in common courses with real-world challenges contributing to the UN, the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. We have now established a strong partnership with 5 African universities where students are picked for exchange programs. Our experience shows that there are great opportunities. Students and universities, both here and there, are interested to participate and to contribute to make new impact. We learn from each other a lot, and we learn that it takes time. One important, well, this one I can jump over, it's too much now. An important step was our booklet, Guide to Challenge-Driven Education. It's used by all our partners in the development of Global Development Hub. And the children grow again, they became adults. Aren't they great? Great, great. When many of the senior colleagues met in Dorian's place in Zagreb, 2018, we discussed a lot of things. Here you see some friends, Chris, Udo, Panos, Tim and Mario, and John and Doria. We had a great time there. One evening over a walk and talk, Panos Papalandros, the president at the time for Design Society, and we talked about common interest. This led to our idea to develop Development of Africa Design, which is a network within Design Society. It's not a SIG, not yet. We don't know exactly. We'll see what happens. We had the first workshop in Delft in ISO 19 and the second in Design 20 online. Please take a look at the Design Society webpage for further information. We welcome all interested. We will, with the support of 5 brilliant students, females of course, from Botswana, Kenya, Sweden and US, conduct a survey to be the base for a meeting in the beginning of ISO 21 at Chalmers, Sweden. We could say that both, and here's beside Panos here you see Susanne Nilsson, who is that we 3 do it together with the students. We could say that both GDH and Africa Design are initiatives that build on the conviction that the young ones will build the future, not us. And the best we can do is to support their learnings, their creativity and their courage. I want to quote my colleague Chris McMahon, the guy at the left of the picture with a glass in his hand. He stated at the Stanford conference ISO 09, and he said, with the global economic downturn and the environmental pressures that face us, there may never have been a greater need for innovation. We need to reinvent many of the engineered systems that we use today, from transportation to living spaces, from manufacturing to water and food supplies. We need to do it in the context of a creaking economic system and faltering trade. The role of the engineering designer in the reinvention is surely paramount in specifying, conceiving, and realizing the new systems. These words are as actual as they were in 2009. My timeline, has of course included a lot of other duties, commissions, boards for companies, for other players, and for Royal Engineering Academy, for Development Corporation, most of which all related to collaborations. So this, I could say that there is a red thread in this collaboration thing. And when I look at the timeline, you see the 4 dots. I didn't explain. These were the time when our children were born. We are coming to the end of my presentation. I'm now officially retired, but not very tired, even if the corona made us both, many of us, both sad and tired. I can also say that as a person, I've always had a tendency to operate in the future, and that has probably been an important part of often being mentally prepared to be favored by coincidence. But it had also meant that opportunity has catched up with me rather than me catching up with opportunity. And that has always not been very convenient or comfortable. And some reflections, personal, of course. There must have been something right in my upbringing, thanks to my parents. And of course, a lot of thanks to my sustainable Johan, my husband, and our children. They almost always supported me. And there was no plan. Things came in my way, or I found their way. I didn't know that engineering design was the right thing. But I like or love to work for development to make positive change. And at least being a woman in this game has never been boring. Sometimes challenging, but never boring. Today in the group that I still call my groups, but it isn't. Now several professors and other academic staff, as well as PhD students, they are great. They have developed much better with me not being there. They are stronger in research than I was, but maybe, and I hope, I gave them a platform of opportunities. What I also see today is a strong design society with the right people and increasing capacity to contribute to a better world and to the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals. It's a pleasure to see all the young female and male academics and industrialists with high ambitions. It gives us hope, really. And this is my last slide. And I put a quote, you can read it yourself. It's a Nobel Peace Prize laureate from Kenya. It's around 10 years ago. That's a good one, I think. And I will say thank you. And I would be happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you very much, Margareta. That was really interesting and very nice to see your personal journey and see how much this is serendipity as well as sort of planning and direction. And I think the careers for many of us are like that, and it's very nice to see that. And I also can totally relate that your children were the big red dots, the real milestones, and everything else was sort of slightly incidental working around that.
That's right.
I think we can probably open up the questions generally, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about whether you had some guiding research questions that you felt sort of followed you through your career, or you followed them.
I think it might sound too easy, but I still think it isn't. How could you make development work as good as possible without all those pitfalls that there are? And I really think that I got, it came to me when I worked in the industry, where I understood that was the only reason why we didn't have the right products at the right price and the right and so forth to help people with their rehabilitation. And it was really crazy, I thought then, but I followed it, and we read a lot of new papers on collaboration between function and how to make that function better. I think that is the core of it. And as a matter of fact, I'm sorry that I didn't work very much with real basic engineering design for many years now. But I think the wait for the processes to work is the main thing.
I can understand that. It's also very striking how you said you worked on collaboration, and we made huge progress on collaboration, and we still have got so much more to do as we're now getting a much greater sort of disciplinary integration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So where do you think the challenges for us will be in collaboration over the next decade?
Wow, that's a tough question. I think there is something good for us with the situation of the COVID, that we have to learn how to collaborate even when we cannot stay close to each other. We always said that you have to know each other, you have to see the eyes and smell the, I still think that is important. But I also started some very good collaboration, making it this way. We need to, and if we do that, we open up new opportunities, I would say. That has to do with, as a psychologist, I'm in an academy where there are people from different disciplines, of course, and she says we cannot do this meeting without having the camera on, because we have to learn to see what you mean by what you're saying. Even if you don't see the body language, you only see the face. You have to learn to understand the face. And the big question is, how do you build trust through a screen, I think.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Should we open this up? Does anybody have any questions? Open your mics, ask your questions.
Hi, Christian.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very inspiring. And I learned that we know each other since '93, which I forgot the exact year. And it was always a pleasure. And I was a great admirer of your work, both in the academic field and in the era of being pro-rector, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. It's a big pleasure.
Do we have any? Ian, yeah, go for it.
I see a raised hand.
Yes, Margareta, I'd like to comment in relation to something that you said towards the end of your presentation, which I thought was really interesting, that you said you hadn't planned it this way. And I think if you hadn't have said that, and if anyone had seen that final slide, they may well have thought that you'd completely planned it, like
Yeah.
with what you'd achieved. So I just wonder, I mean, I think it's an important lesson, certainly for the younger members of the community, to consider that opportunity does come around, and you know, it's about being able to see it and understand it and take advantage of it, rather than thinking I'm going to plan my career out and I'm going to stick with it. And I just wonder, you know, whether you'd had any thoughts in relation to whether your career may have been different in any way had you planned it out, or whether there is a different route to be had, which is more acknowledging opportunity on the fly, if you like, and realizing and creating opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Jan. I would really like your saying. I get sometimes worried while understanding the planning for the youngsters of today. They really want to do a journey that they plan exactly from the beginning, and I get a little bit worried. And they work very much for their CV, not for their interests. So that's a good point. I didn't actually get it. There could have been choices. For example, when I went back to academia, so to say, it was because it was impossible for us to have two industrial jobs. At the time when I became a PhD student, I did look upon PhD students like the ones that really go very slow in the corridors and well, those that didn't get really job. That was my view on it until I understood that there was always a big change in our country at that time. So there are always both professional and personal reasons, and some frames. We couldn't have 2 jobs with traveling parents with a lot of kids. So there was I needed to find something interesting and challenging to do with a better plan on how. When we travel, we do, of course, as academics, but not you can plan it, so it's easier. I don't know if that responded to you.
That makes a lot of sense. I think picking up on this, Margareta, do you think you would have had a different career if you had been a man?
How can I know?
No, but I mean, imagine, or if you hadn't been a mother. I mean, that maybe is the other.
Maybe. When I was a student, I see Martin's hand, so I don't forget. I think I had quite a strange thought when I was a student, because I saw the small token that the boys had, that they said they should do this and that and this and that, and I said, I want to do the same. I will do the same, and if it's not possible to do, then I cannot think of families, and so I was really. It took me. I understood that I really was a woman first when I got my first kid.
Okay. Martin, do you want to ask a question? You need to turn your mic on.
As somebody who has been spectacularly professionally successful and has done interdisciplinary work, and especially interdisciplinary work when you were young and didn't have a secure job, do you think that being interdisciplinary helped you or hindered you or kicked you in a different direction?
That's a very good question. I think I think in some way it helped me, because both those people from the real technology, machine elements, and the psychologists got interested, because they were curious. They were in their own positions, but they got curious, and that was a help. On the other hand, so I you could say, in a way, it sounds very too much, but we designed a field to work in, and that made it. And within that field, there it wasn't so many people. So
this is great if there are jobs in it.
Sorry, I didn't hear you now.
This is great if there are jobs in it.
Right.
Because
so you have to make the jobs.
Mm-hmm. Because what I've seen in a lot of in Britain is that every few years there are interdisciplinary initiatives and promises of project funding and so on, and no jobs. Mm-hmm. So the government talks the talk every so often, but it's still career suicide because the jobs are in being mainstream. And I was wondering if this is something the Swedes are better at than we are.
Talking about not me and at that time, but the students that are educated, there are a lot of jobs. They really, we have followed them up. Those persons that have been educated, they are very, very attractive for industry, extremely attractive as project leaders, and specifically ladies, I would say, because they are so great. When it's quite a competition to get into that, and I cannot judge whether we are better or worse. I cannot, but there are jobs, because they also have a basic engineering education. The ones coming from KTH, of course. Mm-hmm. So I think I think it's not a problem with jobs today for these people, the young ones coming out. Okay. So maybe we could check it out, what if there are differences. Academically, of course, you can, if you try to work on both behavioral science and technology, the top vector cannot be as high if there are two, understand what I mean? If there is, this is the top of technology and this is the top of behavioral science, and you take the hypotenusa, then of course the top is, do you follow me?
Yeah.
Then you cannot be judged, compared with the deep machine element people. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for John?
Margareta, thank you so much. That was a really interesting journey, and I was struck, as was Ian and others, at almost the serendipity, that sense of absolute direction and yet no direction. And I think that's a really encouragement to all of us. And I also want to thank you personally that we met first over normal paper, not even email. You reviewed the very first journal paper I ever wrote as a naive designer come back from industry. And I think what I learned then was what I've learned since, that very gentle way to say was not good enough, please do better, but done in such a way it was so encouraging and helping move me in the right direction. And the question I wanted to ask is that in the field of design and design process, it's really interesting. We have this dilemma of having to be the thinkers, the writers of erudite publications, but we also have a desire to be the doers. It's that combination of the think tank and the do tank. You clearly want to make things happen, to change things around you. So how did you reconcile that challenge to have to perform as an academic with that challenge to make something different and better?
That's a tough question. I really don't. I think you could say that I didn't understand you had to do it. It was on. Well, I understood because it has to be done, and no one else do it, so I had to do it, something like that. And from time to time, and again concerning career steps and so, sometimes I had to, by reasons of the family, for example, when I should present my thesis, I knew most people do things that, oh, I should do this and this and this also, because it's not, it isn't, it should be better. As I was pregnant, I said, if it's not good enough now, then I quit this way. I take another one. So I had to deliver before Karin came. I didn't want to start again because I wanted to get things happen, and not only a PhD, but something else. I don't know, John, if I answered at all your question.
No, I like that sense of trying to do what is right rather than do what is expected of you. I think that's an encouragement to all of us to have that. And
that's a good thing, that you should try to understand yourself what is right for you and what is not. And as Rolf said, if it's not worth doing, it's not worth doing good. I think that's a great saying, and it is about that. And then you, if you really get motivated, then you can do good work.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bastian?
Yes, maybe allow one question about the connection with Africa, because I share your opinion. The only way to make progress is to involve young people from Africa. My question is just, how does it work? How long do students, probably PhDs, come to European or your university? And is there also an exchange in the other direction of students or teachers or whatever going to Africa?
Thank you, Christian. In the Global Development Hub, which is started at KTH, but we wanted to be, we really wanted to be an open platform for big change, for people, for students, for universities and for countries. What we do now, we have students from our country going to the African universities, and we try to develop courses where they work together on challenges related to the development goals that are actual in the country where they do the work. And students from their country come to us, and we work with challenges that are actually in our country. And very interesting and learning experience is that they do connect and do understand that the type of challenges are, well, they are in many ways different, but the base is the same. And we hear a lot of thinking from students having been either there or here, so to say, to bring the ideas and the way to work back home to inspire the people on their universities and their fellow students. And of course, to make this, it takes a long time and a lot of effort. And the idea with the Africa Design is, of course, to interest more people in the design society and to see that this is it's big and interesting and important investment. It's not a cost, it's an investment for a change where we can get more equal and learn from each other how we use the resources. So that's therefore it's really fun with the Africa Design that we have this wonderful 5 students from around the place who really do a lot of the work, and Panos and Susanne and myself are the, well, we are responsible, of course, to the Design Society, but the interest and the capacity they have with their friends and to change things is fantastic. So even if it's a lot of challenges, I really think that this is a way. We also exchange teachers. We, having worked a lot with development collaboration, it's sometimes the Western world goes to somewhere to tell how you do, but that's absolutely the wrong position. We also, from the SIDA in Sweden, have financed a lot of PhDs coming to Sweden, get a PhD and go back. And many of these don't work in the university anymore. Either they go abroad somewhere else, or they come back to do only teaching. So there are too few. So I don't think we do the best if we don't strive for really mutual common learning. So but it's a long ride. We have to start it with high velocity.
Yeah, I mean the main problem in the end is always funding.
Of course, what we did that was interesting. We are now trying to do it greater, bigger, and talk to big funders. But what we got in at KTH, we got one single man, an old friend who had a lot of money that sponsored the start. And then the university came in, and then some funders was, because the sign from someone that is used to invest, the sign from a professional investor that I do this because this is important, was a very, very strong sign. It's not at all what it's need much more, but it's a very good start. And it's, of course, it can't bring in many countries because it's not that rich. And you don't want to.
Margareta, there's also a lot of Africa, and I was always wondering how the Africa SIG is going to reach out to an entire continent, or how you sort of pick the places you work with and how you reach beyond those to the rest of the continent.
Mm-hmm. It's another long ride. What we did then, and that's why we have the Michelle and Dunya, who are the African students in our group. We picked some countries who was relatively safe. We started there because we can't send students to, their parents wouldn't like us to send them to unsafe places. So relatively safe, and universities that in countries that the embassies and the government said that this sounds interesting for our universities. So we really took it that way. So we found 6 in the beginning, but there was no, well, that's, people tend to say that we want to be with you, but then they don't do things. So we have to choose the one who really wants and really would put effort into it. Today there are Botswana, there are Tanzania, there are Kenya, and there is what more, Rwanda, that we now are working with. But there are a big interest from other countries, and we have done master thesis work in other countries also. So I think we have to grow it in the speed that is possible. And the idea, of course, is, well, this is why we think and hope that the ICED coming in Chalmers, we could do this network online, because then it can be possible for many more people from the African continent to be part of it. And we think hopefully we could open it that way. And we also open up with the survey that we will send now, well, in some weeks. So it's but you can't stop starting, even if you can't say how it ends.
That sounds very good. We are past our official time, so I think that we should probably officially close the meeting. We can stay on a little bit longer, but if people feel they need to go on to the next meeting, I think now is definitely the point to do this guilt-free and apology-free.
Thank you very much for good questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions?